Autumn in Atlanta. Georgia brings cool breezes, sweeping yellow leaves gently across streets shaded by towering oak trees. This city where modern rhythms meet the historical struggles of the Black community always carries an exceptional vitality. On a late weekend afternoon, warm yellow lights glowed softly over old wooden shelves inside a small bookstore on Peachtree Street. The cozy space filled with the scent of paper and coffee was hosting a book signing by a local author who had just published a work on social justice. Folding chairs were neatly arranged in rows with around 30 attendees, ranging from young college students to community activists. In the back row, James Harper sat quietly, holding a small notebook, his gaze attentive yet discreet. James, 34, was a software engineer working for a tech company in Midtown Atlanta. He was a white American with shaggy brown hair, light blue eyes behind thin-frame glasses, and a gentle smile that immediately put people at ease. He lived a simple life, a tidy little apartment filled with shelves of science fiction novels, a bicycle he used for commuting, and a few close friends from college. He didn't care for showing off and never chased parties or social media. His job was stable and paid well, but it wasn't his greatest passion. What truly made James feel alive were deep listening, quiet reflection, and searching for meaning in life's small details. Today, James hadn't come because he knew the author, but because a coworker had given him a ticket and said, "You need to get out more, James. Stay cooped up in that office no longer, and you'll become a robot." He came without much expectation, just hoping for a bit of fresh inspiration. But once the discussion began, his attention was pulled toward a woman seated in the front row. She stood up and asked a question about Black representation in literature, her voice low and warm but sharp, like a flame igniting the quiet room. "How can we tell authentic stories?" she asked, "if the people writing them don't understand the wounds our community carries?" The room fell silent, and even the author paused before responding. That woman was Olivia Brooks, a 32-year-old social worker who had spent her youth fighting for underprivileged teens in Atlanta. Olivia was Black with rich brown skin, a full figure, and natural curly hair worn loose like a crown. She wore an olive green dress, simple yet elegant, and her eyes shone with confidence mixed with compassion. Olivia had grown up in a working-class neighborhood in South Atlanta, where she watched her mother work tirelessly to raise 3 daughters. She became used to judgmental glances and whispers about her appearance and skin tone from an early age. But she learned to turn those wounds into fuel. With a master's degree in social work and a heart that never stopped fighting, Olivia led youth programs, organized food drives, and never hesitated to stand up for the forgotten. James couldn't take his eyes off Olivia, not because of her appearance, though he found her beautiful in a very distinct way, but because of how she spoke, how she commanded the room to listen. Every question she asked, every opinion she offered, carried a power that made James feel like he was being awakened. He who had always lived safely among lines of code and paperbacks suddenly wanted to know more about her and the world she represented. When the signing ended and people began standing up chatting enthusiastically, James, usually shy in such situations, felt his heart race. He wanted to say something to her, but didn't know how to begin. After a brief chat with the author, Olivia held her newly signed book and prepared to leave. She hadn't noticed James watching her from the back, but as she walked past, James suddenly stood up, gripping his coffee cup like a shield. "Hi," he said, his voice slightly trembling. I liked your question. I mean, it made me think about a lot of things." A little surprised, Olivia paused and looked at him with curious eyes. "Thank you," she replied, her smile gentle, yet warm. Not many people pay attention to questions like that. James blushed, struggling to find the right words. "I mean it. You made me wonder." What I've been missing and how I see the world. Olivia tilted her head as if assessing him. Then she smiled more broadly. You should start looking more closely. She extended her hand. I'm Olivia Brooks. James took her hand, feeling its warmth. James Harper, he replied, and at that moment he knew this encounter was no accident. They stood there chatting for a few more minutes, about books, about Atlanta, about what made them laugh. Olivia told a story about a boy in her youth program who had just earned a scholarship for an essay on dreams. James shared about when he failed to learn the saxophone and failed miserably. They both laughed, and Olivia's laugh, resonant and sincere, turned heads around the room. James felt the whole world had shrunk to just the two in that little bookstore. When Olivia had to leave to meet a colleague, she handed James a business card from her organization. If you want to learn more about the world I mentioned, she winked, get in touch. James took the card and watched her leave the bookstore, her figure merging with the golden sunset on Peachtree Street. He stood there alone, but no longer feeling lonely. A spark had been lit inside him, not just curiosity about Olivia, but a desire to step outside his shell, to discover a bigger world, one that included her. He didn't yet know that this moment would change his entire life and the lives of those around him. The late afternoon in Atlanta brought golden orange rays of sunlight filtering through the oak trees along Peachtree Street. James Harper stood in front of the bookstore, holding Olivia Brooks's business card tightly. Her name printed boldly on crisp white paper alongside the words, Seeds of Value. Empowering Atlanta's youth made him smile. He had never felt his heart beat so fast, not from nervousness, but from a strange feeling, as if he had just found a missing piece he never knew was lost. James, who was used to the repetitive cycle of tech office hours and his small apartment, suddenly saw the world as broader and more vibrant, all because of a brief conversation. A few days later, James sat in his apartment, the glow of a desk lamp lighting up his laptop keyboard. He had been researching Olivia's organization, a nonprofit supporting Black youth in Atlanta's underserved neighborhoods. The Seeds of Value website was full of inspiring stories. A 16-year-old girl who earned a college scholarship thanks to a mentorship program, a teenage boy who had once dropped out of school is now running a car repair shop with startup support. James, usually reluctant regarding social interaction, felt a strange urge. He texted Olivia, trying to keep the tone casual. Hi, Olivia. This is James from the book signing. I just read about Seeds of Value. Your work is incredible. Is there a way I could learn more? He hit send and immediately panicked. Was the message too forward? Would she think he was weird? Olivia replied, just a few minutes later with a smiling emoji. Hi, James. Thanks for the kind words. If you're free, I can give you a tour of our office on Saturday. Fair warning, it might be a little loud. James laughed out loud, relieved. He agreed right away, and he counted down the days for the rest of the week. When Saturday arrived, James stood in front of a small building in East Atlanta, home to the Seeds of Value headquarters. A green sign with a seed-shaped logo made him smile. Olivia appeared at the door, wearing a t-shirt that read, Grow Where You're Planted, and jeans, her curly hair pulled up high. Hey, stranger, she teased, eyes sparkling, ready to be overwhelmed. The office space was chaotic, but full of life. The walls were covered with children's paintings. Whiteboards were crammed with plans for community events, and laughter echoed from a group of teenagers rehearsing for a play. Olivia led James around, introducing him to volunteers, ranging from a retired teacher to a local rapper, and talking him through their ongoing projects. James was pulled into her energy and how she spoke about each kid as if they were family. When a girl named Maya ran over to share a newly written poem, Olivia sat down to listen intently and clapped in praise. James stood there quietly watching, feeling a deep sense of respect. Olivia wasn't just working, she was living for this mission. After the tour, Olivia invited James to a nearby park. Under the setting sun, they sat on a wooden bench, each holding a coffee from a nearby cart. "So, James Harper." Olivia began playfully, "What kind of guy are you? The kind who codes all day and reads all night?" James laughed, scratching his head. "Pretty close. I'm not great at talking, but I like to listen. And today, hearing you talk about the kids, I want to do something too, even just a small part." Olivia tilted her head, as if trying to read his thoughts. "James, not many people are willing to step into someone else's world. You being here curious, that's already a start." Their conversation stretched on for hours. From childhood stories, James recalling the time he tried to build a spaceship model and set the garage on fire. Olivia reminiscing about singing gospel with her mother on warm nights, to bigger dreams. Olivia wanted to open a larger community center where kids could learn and feel safe. For the first time, James admitted his sense of disconnection at work, despite being good at programming. "Sometimes I wonder what I'm even building," he confessed. "Another app? Or just an endless loop?" Olivia smiled. "Then build something that matters. It doesn't have to be big, just real." In the days that followed, they began texting more often. The early messages about books, music, or a new restaurant slowly turned into long evening phone calls. James discovered that Olivia loved jazz, especially Ella Fitzgerald, so he sent her a playlist with the caption, "Consider this a thank you for the tour." Olivia replied with a karaoke video of herself singing, not perfectly, but with so much feeling it made James laugh until his stomach hurt. They met again for breakfast at a small cafe in Virginia Highland. Olivia ordered pancakes with strawberry sauce, while James chose eggs and toast. They sat there talking about everything and nothing, as if time didn't exist. Though confident in front of crowds, Olivia realized she was letting her guard down with James. She was used to being judged for her full-figure skin color and loud voice. In Atlanta, where the Black community was celebrated and scrutinized, she had always needed to be strong. But with James, she felt seen not through the lens of society, but through the truth of who she was. James, in turn, felt himself changing. Once too shy to strike up conversations with strangers, he now felt excited every time Olivia's name popped up on his phone. He even started volunteering at Seeds of Value, helping set up the computer systems for a tech class to be near her. But somewhere in the background, James felt a subtle pressure building. When he told his close friend Ethan about Olivia, he noticed the hesitation in his voice. "She sounds interesting," Ethan said, though his eyes revealed doubt. James said nothing, but he knew that the world outside his friend's co-workers, even his family, might not readily accept Olivia the way he did. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on Olivia's smile and how she made him feel alive. But deep down, he knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, and he began to wonder whether he would be strong enough to walk it. Winter had begun to creep into Atlanta, bringing biting winds that swept through the bustling streets. James Harper and Olivia Brooks had become inseparable from each other's lives, and weekend mornings at the little diner in Virginia Highland, where they shared pancakes and coffee, had become a familiar routine. Late-night phone calls when Olivia would talk about a child in the Seeds of Value program who scored high on a test, or James would vent about a frustrating programming bug that kept him up all night, brought them closer. Once withdrawn, James found himself laughing more, opening up more. Olivia, who had always been strong in front of crowds, found safety in James's sincerity. But as their relationship deepened, the glances and words from the outside world began to show like tiny cracks on the surface of a calm lake. One Friday evening, James invited Olivia to Ethan's birthday party, his close friend from college, held at a bar in the Buckhead district. He wanted her to meet the people important to him, to see that he was proud of her. Olivia, though slightly hesitant, due to her busy schedule at Seeds of Value, agreed. She chose a deep red dress, tied her curls high, and wore her radiant smile as always. When they entered the bar, dim lights and soft jazz filled the space. James introduced Olivia to Ethan and a group of friends, including Sarah, a former colleague. The smiles were polite, but James noticed the stiffness in their eyes. Ethan clapped James on the shoulder and said loudly, "You finally brought someone here. I thought you were going to be single forever." But as Olivia stepped away to get a drink, Ethan leaned in and murmured, "She's different from the girls you've dated." "Huh?" James frowned, trying to stay calm. Different how he asked, voice low but sharp. Ethan shrugged, forcing a smile. "I mean, she's very energetic." "Are you sure, man?" James didn't respond. He just tightened his grip on his beer. A few steps away, Olivia hadn't heard the conversation, but she sensed the looks. After a few drinks, Sarah blurted out to a friend that James must be going through a rebellious phase. "She's not his type." Olivia, mid-conversation with someone else, overheard the comment. She smiled and continued talking, but her hand clenched the hem of her dress. She was all too familiar with such backhanded remarks about her skin color, full figure, and how whole figure, and how she took up space with her presence. But this time in James's world, the words cut deeper. On the ride home, sitting in James's car, Olivia was silent, staring out the window. The neon lights of Atlanta streaked past, reflecting off her face. James, sensing the shift, asked gently, "Are you okay? Did you have fun tonight?" Olivia turned to him with a faint smile. "It was nice, but did you see how they looked at me?" James tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his chest heavy. "I'm sorry, Olivia. Ethan and Sarah. They didn't mean anything by it. They just—" He trailed off, unsure of what to say. Olivia shook her head. "They don't have to mean it, James. I grew up in Atlanta, and I know what those looks mean. They think I don't belong here, that I don't belong with you." James pulled over to the side of the road and looked her in the eye. "They're wrong. You belong with me, and I belong with you. I don't care what they think." James's words were sincere, but Olivia felt a subtle, invisible distance. She recalled her mother's words from childhood. "You must be twice as strong, because the world won't be easy on you." She had built her armor through her work smile, and all the times she stood up for others. But tonight she wondered whether she could keep being strong as she stepped into James's world, a world of white spaces, upper-class neighborhoods, and expectations she could never meet. "You don't have to protect me," she said softly but firmly. "I need to know if you're ready to face these things with me." A few days later, at his tech company in Midtown, James overheard a co-worker, Mark, joking during a break. "I heard James is dating some community activist. I bet she gives great speeches because looks-wise." Mark laughed, but stopped when he saw James standing behind him. James, who usually avoided confrontation, looked Mark straight in the eye. "She's the most incredible person I've ever known. If you've got a problem, please tell me directly." Mark awkwardly apologized, but his words lingered in James's mind. He realized that his love for Olivia wasn't just between them, it was a challenge to the world around them. That weekend, James visited his mother Ellen at her small home in the suburbs of Decatur. A retired elementary school teacher, Ellen was always proud of James, but also worried about his introverted nature. When James told her about Olivia, she listened politely, though her eyes revealed doubt. "She sounds exceptional," she said, then hesitated. "But are you sure she's the right one? I mean, your lives might be complicated." James stood up, voice calm but resolute. "Mom, I love her, and I've never been more sure of anything." Ellen said nothing more, But James knew gaining his family's acceptance would be a long journey. Meanwhile, Olivia returned to her work at Seeds of Value. She led a workshop for teenage girls sharing ways to overcome prejudice. But inside, she couldn't stop thinking about that night at the bar. She wondered if she was pulling James into a fight he wasn't ready for. A fellow volunteer, Lena, noticed Olivia's quiet mood. "You okay, Liv?" she asked. Olivia smiled, but her voice trembled slightly. "Lena, if I love someone, but the world doesn't want us to be together, what should I do?" Lena took her hand. "Love is a journey, not a destination. If that person's willing to walk it with you, the rest will figure itself out." Lena's words made Olivia smile, but she knew the real challenges were still ahead. Winter nights in Atlanta cloaked the city in a layer of fog with hazy streetlights, glowing like lost sparks in the dark. James Harper sat alone in his small midtown apartment, the light from his desk lamp casting a glow over his tense features. On the table was a cup of coffee gone cold. Beside it, his phone displaying Olivia's last message. "Thank you for tonight. I need a little time." "Okay?" It was a short message, but weighed heavily on James's heart. He looked out the window where the city lights flickered and wondered whether he could protect the love he cherished most. In the days following Ethan's birthday party, James couldn't shake the image of Olivia's hurt expression as she spoke about the whispers at the bar. He kept hearing her voice, gentle but resolute. "I need to know if you're ready to face these things with me." That question lingered like a test he wasn't sure he could pass. James had grown up in suburban Decatur, a white middle-class family, where everything always seemed in its place. Good schools, friendly neighbors, and clear expectations for everyday life. He had never faced prejudice, or looked at with suspicion, simply for being who he was. But Olivia, with her brown skin, commanding voice, and presence that filled every room, lived in a world James was only beginning to understand. He stood and walked to the bookshelf, where a small photo was tucked into his favorite sci-fi novel. It was a picture of him and Olivia at the park after the Seeds of Value tour, both beaming, Olivia raising her coffee cup like a toast. Looking at the photo, James felt warmth, quickly followed by fear. He loved Olivia, loved the way she made his world feel larger, loved how she turned pain into strength. But the words from Ethan, from Sarah, from his mother, and Mark at work felt like small stones thrown into the calm surface of his life. "She's different. Are you sure life will be complicated?" They weren't just prejudices, but reminders that loving Olivia would come at a cost. James sat on the sofa, his head in his hands. He wondered if he was pulling Olivia into a fight he wasn't strong enough to fight. He thought about the night at the bar, how he hadn't heard Sarah's comment, but still saw Olivia's pain. He had told her she belonged with him, but were those words enough? Could he stand up to his friends, family, and the world to protect her? James had never been confrontational. At work, he avoided arguments, letting Mark and others joke freely. At home, he agreed with his mother to keep the peace. But with Olivia, silence was no longer an option. That night, James didn't sleep. He opened his laptop and revisited the Seeds of Value website. He read every story about the kids Olivia had helped: Maya, the girl who wrote poems, or Jamal, the former dropout, who now dreamed of being an engineer. He watched a video of Olivia speaking at a community event, her voice filled with passion. "We don't change the world by waiting for acceptance. We change it by standing up even if no one stands with us." Her words struck James like a lightning bolt. Olivia didn't need him to save her. She needed him to stand beside her. The next morning, James decided to act. He texted Olivia, "I can't promise I'll get everything right, but I promise I'll be here with you. When you're ready, I'd like to talk." His heart pounded as he hit send. Olivia replied a few hours later. "Thank you, James. Saturday. Same spot. Is that okay?" James smiled, feeling as though he'd crossed an invisible barrier. He knew the upcoming conversation wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to listen and face whatever she needed him to understand. That weekend at the small diner in Virginia Highland, James and Olivia sat across from each other, a plate of warm pancakes between them. Wearing a deep blue sweater, Olivia looked calm, though her eyes were cautious. "I'm not angry," she began. "But I need you to understand that what happened at the bar wasn't the first time and won't be the last. I've lived with it my whole life. The looks, the whispers. But I don't want you to say you don't care. I want you to see it and choose to stand with me." James nodded, gripping his coffee cup. "I'm learning, Olivia. I don't know everything, but I want to understand. I want to be someone you can count on." Olivia smiled for the first time that morning. "Then we start from here," she said. "But James, there will come a time when you'll have to choose between me and your comfort. Are you ready for that?" James looked her in the eye, his voice steadier than ever. "I'm ready." He didn't know if he would do everything right, but he knew his love for Olivia was worth fighting for. As they left the diner hand in hand, James felt a new kind of strength, not the kind to change the world, but the kind to change himself for her. The following autumn, Atlanta dressed itself in a vibrant robe of golden and red leaves, as if the city was celebrating something sacred. After months of emotional highs and trials, James Harper and Olivia Brooks decided to enter a new chapter together. James didn't choose a fancy restaurant or an elaborate proposal. Instead, he knelt in the small kitchen of their shared home, amid the warm smell of pancakes and the soft jazz of Ella Fitzgerald playing from an old speaker. "Olivia, I can't promise you the whole world," he said, his hand trembling as he held out a simple silver ring, "but I promise to give you my world to love and stand by you." Glistening with tears, Olivia embraced him and whispered, "Yes, James, yes." They planned a modest wedding, one that reflected who they truly were. Olivia never dreamed of expensive gowns or lavish venues. She wanted a genuine ceremony where their love would be the centerpiece. James agreed, and they chose Piedmont Park, a lush green space in the heart of Atlanta, where oak trees formed a natural archway. The wedding took place on a cool autumn afternoon, with just about 30 guests. Close friends, James's family, and volunteers from Seeds of Value, like Lena, who had become a spiritual anchor for Olivia. There was no large orchestra, just a friend playing acoustic guitar. There was no extravagant reception, only a buffet table with pastries and fruit juices. James wore a navy blue suit, his tie loosened in his favorite laid-back style, his smile wide but slightly bashful. Olivia appeared in a simple white dress, a silver sash cinching her waist, and a light veil fluttering in the breeze. Her natural curls were left loose, symbolizing the confidence she always carried. As she walked down an aisle covered in fallen leaves, hand in hand with James, the two looked at each other as if the rest of the world didn't exist. Lena, standing between them, as officiant, smiled and said, "Today, we're not just witnessing love, we're seeing the bravery of two souls choosing each other in defiance of every barrier." The ceremony was filled with laughter and tears. A young girl from Seeds of Value. Maya read a poem she had written for Olivia, earning heartfelt applause. In his vows, James said, "Olivia, you've taught me to see the world with my heart. I promise to keep learning, fighting, and loving you every day." Olivia, voice trembling, replied, "James, you are my safe place, and I promise to help build a better world with you, starting with us." As they exchanged rings and kissed under the canopy of trees, Sunlight broke through the leaves like nature's blessing. But the joy of that day would not go untouched. A friend of Ethan's who had attended the wedding snapped a photo of James and Olivia walking hand in hand down the aisle smiling brightly. He posted the image on social media with a cruel caption, "When you choose love from the bottom shelf." The photo went viral quickly, attracting thousands of brutal comments from Atlanta and online forums. "She looks like she walked out of a comedy sketch," one person wrote. "This guy must have been forced into marriage," another said. Olivia was labeled with offensive names, overweight, among other racially charged slurs. James was mocked as crazy, or part of some joke. James found out about the post the next morning when a coworker sent him the link with a laughing emoji. He scrolled through the comments, each word a blade. He immediately deleted his social media accounts, but the damage was done. Olivia, though she didn't use social media much, received a message from Lena warning her about the post. She opened her laptop, glanced through a few comments, then closed it. She sat on the couch hugging a pillow tightly, her eyes hollow. James walked in, and seeing her immediately dropped to his knees beside her. "Olivia, don't read them," he said urgently. "They're not worth it." Olivia looked up, her eyes red but her voice steady. "James, I know how this world works. I was prepared for this. But today was supposed to be our day." She paused, taking a deep breath. "I just wanted one day where I wasn't the target." James held her, feeling her body tremble slightly. He wanted to say something to make it all better, but he knew no words were strong enough. Instead, he got up, pulled out an old Ella Fitzgerald CD, and played Summertime. He gently pulled Olivia to her feet, held her close, and they slowly danced in the living room amid the invisible shards of their wedding day. At that moment, James realized their love wasn't just about joy. It was a vow, a battle. He whispered in her ear, "They can say whatever they want, Olivia, but they can't take this us." Olivia nodded, resting her head on his shoulder, and though the pain lingered, she felt a flicker of hope. They didn't know it yet, but from the ashes of that ridicule, they would build a legacy that would silence the world. After the final lights at Piedmont Park had gone out on their wedding night, James Harper and Olivia Brooks returned to their small apartment in Midtown Atlanta. The familiar space with shelves of science fiction novels and a mural painted by a child from Seeds of Value now felt different. Warm, yes, but also heavy. The cruel comments from their wedding photo, which had spread online, still hung over them like a dark cloud dimming the moonlight. Still in his white dress shirt from the ceremony, James loosened his tie and hung it over a chair. Having changed out of her wedding gown into a cozy sweater and leggings, Olivia sat silently on the sofa, holding a mug of hot tea, but not drinking it. The soft glow of a desk lamp lit Olivia's face, highlighting the redness in her eyes. She looked down at her phone, the screen still displaying a social media page filled with vicious comments. "She thinks she's a bride. Looks like a joke. This guy must have been forced to marry her. Who else would?" Though not unfamiliar to Olivia, who had grown up facing judgment in Atlanta. Words like these cut deeper than ever now. She had lived her life surrounded by prejudice about her dark skin, her whole figure, her bold voice that never blended in. But today, the day she and James vowed to be each other's forever, she wanted to feel like a bride, not a target. James stepped out of the kitchen with a glass of water and noticed the uneasy silence. He set it down, sat beside her, and gently took the phone from her hand. "Liv, don't," he said, voice pleading but soft. "They're not worth it." Olivia looked up, tears sliding down her cheeks. "James, I know they're not worth it. I've heard words like that since I was a little girl in school, in the neighborhood, everywhere. But today," she paused, inhaling deeply, "today, I just wanted to be your wife, not the world's punchline." Her voice trembled, But it wasn't weak. It was the exhaustion of someone who had always been strong and was now simply tired. James felt his chest tighten. He wanted to say something to take the pain away, to make it all better, but he knew no words would be enough. He thought back to the moment in the park when Olivia walked down the aisle, her smile brighter than the sunlight. He remembered his vows to learn, fight, and love her daily. But now, seeing her hurt, he felt helpless. He knelt before her, taking her hand and wrapping his warm palms around her cold fingers. Olivia, you're my wife. No one can change that. Those people out there, they don't know you. They don't know us. They type a way to mask the emptiness inside themselves. Olivia looked into his pale blue eyes, searching for comfort. She remembered being a young girl listening to her mother, a black woman who worked tirelessly in a factory, say, "The world will hurt you, but don't let it shame you." Olivia had lived by those words, turning wounds into fuel, from earning her degree to leading seeds of value. But tonight, that armor cracked. "James, I'm not ashamed of who I am," she said, voice low but steady. "But I'm tired. I'm tired of always having to prove that I'm enough." Her words sliced into James like a blade. He thought of every time he had stayed silent when Ethan whispered at the bar. Mark made that joke at work, and his mother hesitated with doubt. He had chosen comfort over confrontation. And now he saw that his silence had become part of Olivia's pain. "I'm sorry, Liv," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't do enough, but from now on, I won't let you face this alone. I promise." Olivia nodded, though her gaze drifted. James stood up, fetched a thick blanket from the bedroom, and wrapped it around her shoulders. He opened his laptop and found the wedding video, a Seeds of Value volunteer recorded. He played it with the sound off, letting the images speak for themselves. Olivia's radiant smile as Maya read her poem, James fumbling as he placed the ring on her finger, the two dancing under the trees in the golden light of dusk. "Look, Liv," he said, pointing to the screen. "This is us. No one can take this away." Olivia watched, and a small smile appeared on her lips. She leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his body. James played "Summertime" by Ella Fitzgerald, the song that had played the night he proposed. He pulled Olivia to her feet, held her close, and they danced slowly in the living room, their footsteps soft on the wooden floor. Olivia closed her eyes, letting the music and his embrace soothe her aching heart. "I can't promise the world will stop hurting you," James whispered. "But I promise I'll always be here holding your hand no matter what." Olivia nodded, tears still falling, but they weren't only from pain this time. They were tears of gratitude, of trust. Because no matter how harsh the world was, she knew she wasn't alone. When the song ended, they sat back on the sofa, still holding each other. Olivia told James about a girl at Seeds of Value who had been bullied because of her skin color, but had later stood up and read her poem in front of the school. Olivia said, "That little girl reminded me that we don't win by hiding. We win by living, by loving." James smiled and held her hand tighter. He knew their challenges were far from over. But tonight, in this small apartment, they had found the strength to keep going. In the days following the wedding, Atlanta was drenched in early winter rain, as if the sky were mourning the pain Olivia Brooks carried inside. Their small midtown apartment, where she and James Harper had built a home, still smelled of coffee and echoed with soft jazz, but Olivia felt a quiet emptiness. The viral wave of ridicule from their wedding photo had subsided, but the cruel words, "a joke too big, not good enough," still echoed in her mind. Every morning, she looked into the mirror and saw a strong woman, but she also saw old scars from years of rejection. Olivia grew up in South Atlanta, a working-class neighborhood where her mother, Grace, worked tirelessly to raise 3 daughters. She remembered being mocked at school for her dark skin, whole figure, and loud voice that always stood out. At 16, she once wrote a love letter to a boy, only to see it passed around and laughed at in class. Those wounds had driven her to social work, Seeds of Value, where she transformed pain into strength by helping kids like her find their voices. But on her wedding night, crying in James's arms, Olivia realized that no matter how strong she became, those scars could still be touched. One morning, Olivia stood before the mirror, fingers gently running through her natural curls. She thought about James, how he held her on their wedding night, about his promise to always stand by her. She knew he loved her, but she wondered if she was pulling him into a battle he didn't fully understand. She didn't want James to be just her protector. She wanted him to be her companion, someone who could see the world through her eyes. But to help him do that, she knew she had to find herself again, to heal the wounds that the hateful comments had reopened. Olivia returned to Seeds of Value, where she always found purpose. The East Atlanta office was as vibrant as ever, filled with children's laughter and whiteboards crammed with notes. Lena, a longtime volunteer, noticed Olivia's contemplative expression when she walked in. "Girl, you okay?" Lena asked, placing a hand on Olivia's shoulder. Olivia smiled, but her eyes revealed her exhaustion. "Lena, I'm just trying to find myself again." Lena nodded and led her into a small room where they often talked. "How was the wedding?" Lena asked, though she had already heard about what had happened from other volunteers. Olivia shared everything from the joy beneath the Piedmont Park trees to the pain of reading the online comments. "You know," she said, "I thought I was used to those kinds of words. But this time felt different. It made me wonder if I even deserved this happiness." Lena looked at her with a gaze that was both gentle and fierce. "Olivia, you don't have to deserve happiness. Happiness is your right. Those people, they don't hate you. They hate your power, because you dare to be exactly who you are." Lena's words felt like a breeze across Olivia's soul, gentle but powerful. That afternoon, Olivia led a workshop for teenage girls at Seeds of Value. The topic was redefining your self-worth. Standing before 10 young girls, Olivia noticed the eyes of Aisha, a 15-year-old black girl who had been bullied for her appearance. Aisha timidly raised her hand and asked in a quiet voice, "Ms. Olivia, how do you stop caring when people say you're not good enough?" Olivia took a deep breath, memories of her wedding night rising. She walked over to Aisha and sat down so they were eye to eye. "Aisha, you don't need to silence them. You need your voice to be louder. When they say you're not good enough, you remind yourself that you define your worth." Her words weren't just for Aisha. They were for herself. She told the girls about the wedding, not mentioning the hateful comments, but focusing on the moment she and James held hands beneath the trees. That day, she said, "I didn't just marry the man I love. I married myself, my true self, with all my scars and strength." The girls applauded, and Aisha smiled for the first time during the workshop. Olivia felt a renewed energy. She realized that to overcome the pain, she didn't need to change who she was. She needed to embrace it. That evening, Olivia returned home to find James making dinner his usual spaghetti, which he often ruined, but kept trying anyway. She smiled and walked over to hug him from behind. "Thank you for last night," she said. James turned to her, worry in his eyes. "You okay, Liv?" Olivia nodded and pulled him to the table. "I've been thinking a lot today. About us. About me. I don't want my pain to become your burden. But I need you to understand sometimes I'll need space to heal." James took her hand and nodded. "I'll be here. Whatever you need. Olivia told James about Aisha the workshop and how she rediscovered her strength through the children. They reminded me, I'm not fighting alone, she said. And you're part of that fight too. James smiled and pulled her into an embrace. Then we fight together. That night, they sat side by side, eating slightly burnt spaghetti and listening to Ella Fitzgerald. And Olivia knew, though the world outside remained harsh, she had found her fire again. The rain had lifted in Atlanta, giving way to early spring sunlight streaming through the oak trees and brightening the bustling streets. After the emotional whirlwind of their wedding and the sting of online ridicule, James Harper and Olivia Brooks decided they would not let the world define them. In their cozy midtown apartment, amid pancake breakfasts and the timeless jazz of Ella Fitzgerald, they began to draw up a larger plan, not to answer the critics, but to turn pain into purpose. They would build a legacy starting in the community that raised Olivia. One morning, Olivia sat at the kitchen table, a notebook filled with scribbles and plans before her. She looked over at James, who was focused on making coffee with exaggerated concentration, and said, James, I want to expand Seeds of Value. Not just small programs anymore. I want a community center where kids can learn, dream, and feel safe. James set the mug down, his eyes lighting up. That's a great idea, Liv. But if we go that big, we'll need to get organized. I can help with management systems, the website, and online fundraising. Olivia smiled, reaching for his hand. Then we do it together. Not to prove anything to anyone, but for the kids. For us. They began turning the idea into reality. Olivia, with her experience at Seeds of Value, led the mission. She contacted longtime volunteers like Lena, who immediately pledged her support, and recruited new ones, teachers, artists, and local entrepreneurs. James developed a management system with his software engineering background to track programs, scholarships, and donations. He also built a new website for the organization spotlighting children like Maya and Jamal's stories and highlighting Seeds of Value's impact on Atlanta's Black community. They named the new center the Roots Hub, symbolizing growth rooted in strong local foundations. It wasn't easy. Olivia and James worked late into the night, balancing their day jobs and the new project. They hosted fundraising events at churches and schools in East Atlanta, where Olivia passionately shared her vision. We're not just building a structure. We're building a place where the next generation knows they are worthy no matter what the world says. Standing quietly at the side of the room, James watched her with pride and awe. He realized Olivia wasn't just his wife. She was a flame lighting up everyone around her. The community responded. A local bakery donated food for events. A group of Spelman College students volunteered to teach art classes. Lena, with her deep local connections, introduced them to potential donors. But not everyone was supportive. Some residents from Buckhead, where James had once brought Olivia to a party, whispered that the project was too ambitious or just a publicity stunt. One potential donor, after meeting Olivia, declined with a vague response. We're looking for something more aligned with the broader community. Though hurt, Olivia smiled and told James, they don't see our value, but we'll make them look. Olivia opened up about the challenges at a team meeting at the Seeds of Value office. There will be people who don't believe in us, she told the volunteers, but every step we take is building something they can't ignore. Maya, the girl who read a poem at their wedding, raised her hand. Ms. Olivia, I want to organize a poetry showcase to raise funds. I want to tell my story. Olivia embraced, her eyes glistening with tears. You just gave me another reason to keep going. Maya's showcase, held at a local library, drew dozens of attendees and raised over $2,000. It was a small victory, but it felt like a spark reignited for Olivia and James. Meanwhile, James faced his test. During a break at work, Mark, the coworker who had once mocked Olivia, asked, So are you planning to quit and chase your wife's charity dream full-time? James, now more confident, replied, "No, I'm building something more meaningful than any code I've ever written." Mark fell silent, and James realized that he wasn't just standing up for Olivia, he was standing up for himself, for his belief in a better world. That evening at their apartment, Olivia and James reviewed their roadmap for the Roots Hub. They were tired but fulfilled. Olivia rested her head on his shoulder and said, "You know, I used to think those cruel comments would destroy us. But now I see their fuel. They make me want to do even more." James kissed her forehead. "We're not just building a center, Liv. We're building a legacy." They played My Funny Valentine by Ella Fitzgerald and danced slowly in their living room, knowing the road ahead was long, but they had found their shared purpose. Summer in Atlanta brought its signature humid heat, but it also lit up the streets with blooming azaleas and children's laughter. In their small midtown apartment, James Harper and Olivia Brooks continued their journey as both husband and wife co-founders of the Roots Hub, a community center slowly coming as both husband and wife uggles and online ridicule. Olivia found renewed strength through her work and James's love. But deep down, she knew that to lead this mission fully, she had to take care of herself, not to meet others' expectations, but to become the strongest version of who she already was. Each morning before sunrise, Olivia woke early dressed in workout clothes and headed to a small gym near the Seeds of Value office in East Atlanta. She had begun training not because of the cruel remarks about her body, but because she wanted more energy to run programs, stand before crowds, and inspire the children she mentored. The first workouts were challenging. She panted after just minutes on the treadmill, and memories of being teased in school came flooding back. But every time she wanted to give up, she thought of Aisha, the girl at Seeds of Value, who had stood up and read her poem to an entire school, and of James, who had always believed in her. Slowly, Olivia found her rhythm jogging light weights and yoga to keep her spirit steady. Olivia didn't publicize her journey. She didn't post photos on social media or boast about the changes. But after 6 months, she felt the difference. She moved more easily, slept better, and could stand for hours at the Roots Hub events without fatigue. She had lost nearly 60 pounds, but more importantly, she felt vibrant, like her body and soul were finally in sync. James noticed the transformation, not through physical changes, but in her bright eyes and ever-present smile. "You're glowing, Liv," he told her one evening as they ate spaghetti in the kitchen. Olivia laughed and teased, "You may be finally getting better at cooking." Alongside her journey, Olivia poured her energy into the Roots Hub. Thanks to donations and local support, the center had secured a lease on an old building in East Atlanta. Olivia, James, and their volunteers transformed the space into a thriving hub, green-painted walls, classrooms with computers James installed, and a small art corner where Maya and other girls could paint. Olivia led programs ranging from coding classes to confidence workshops, often inviting local guest speakers like a well-known Black poet from the area. With her event planning experience, Lena managed logistics, while James continually updated the website with success stories, including Jamal's recent scholarship to a technical institute. But the road wasn't always smooth. Some donors remained hesitant, claiming the project was too focused on the Black community and not universal enough. Though disappointed, Olivia stayed firm. In a team meeting, she told her staff, "If we don't stand up for ourselves, who will? Every child who walks through that door is a reason to keep going." Her words ignited the team. They redoubled their efforts organizing markets and music nights to raise funds. At one evening event, as Olivia gave a speech to a packed community gathering, an older woman came up and hugged her, whispering, "You remind me of myself when I thought I couldn't." "Thank you." Olivia smiled, her eyes shining with tears, feeling the profound truth in her mission. Meanwhile, James continued to support Olivia, but he also began to find his calling. He started teaching an introductory coding class at the Roots Hub, showing kids like Jamal how to write simple programs. For the first time, he felt joy he had never experienced in the corporate tech world. One day, he told Olivia about a student who had built his first game. She took his hand and said, "You're doing more than you realize, James. You're changing lives." James smiled, and deep down, he knew she was right. That evening, Olivia and James reviewed plans for the Roots Hub in their apartment. Olivia finally opened up fully about her fitness journey. "I didn't do this so people would accept me," she said. "I did it because I want to be stronger for the kids, for us." James nodded, pulling her into his arms. "Liv, you've always been strong even before I met you. But I love how you keep growing." They put on Summertime by Ella Fitzgerald and slow danced in the living room. And Olivia knew that even though the scars of the past remained, she was rewriting her story one step at a time. Autumn returned to Atlanta, bringing cool breezes and brilliant golden leaves, a reminder of the journey James Harper and Olivia Brooks had walked together. 15 months after their stormy wedding, they overcame the wave of online ridicule and turned pain into purpose. The Roots Hub. The community center they built from seeds of value had become a beacon of hope in East Atlanta, where dozens of Black youth found opportunities to learn, create, and believe in themselves. With the support of the community, Olivia and James proved that love and perseverance could reshape a world. One October evening, Olivia was invited as the keynote speaker at TEDx Atlanta with the theme, Redefining Value. She stepped onto a small midtown theater stage in a simple but elegant deep blue dress, her natural curls flowing freely. Under the spotlight, her confident smile and radiant eyes drew the audience in. In front of hundreds, Olivia told her story from the young girl teased in South Atlanta schools, to the woman mocked on her wedding day, to the leader of a center transforming lives. She said our value isn't defined by what others see, her voice echoing through the room. It's characterized by what we build despite every prejudice. She spoke about the Roots Hub, about children like Maya, who had organized a poetry showcase, and Jamal, who had earned a technical scholarship. She talked about James, who had given up comfort to stand beside her and the Atlanta community, from Lena to local donors who had helped make the dream real. She ended her talk with, "I didn't change to be loved. I changed because I was already loved." The entire theater rose in a standing ovation. The TEDx video went viral, garnering millions of views worldwide. Olivia's name became a symbol of resilience. At the same time, her memoir Still Worthy was published and quickly became a bestseller. The book didn't just chronicle her journey, it called readers to embrace their worth, no matter society's judgment. At a book signing at an independent bookstore in Atlanta, Olivia reunited with Aisha, the teenage girl from her earlier workshops. Now more confident, Aisha hugged Olivia and said, "You made me believe I can do anything." Olivia smiled, tears glistening, feeling the profound impact of her journey. Their success was publicly honored at a charity gala in Atlanta, where the Roots Hub received a major community award. Olivia and James walked in hand, greeted by admiration from hundreds of guests. One former skeptic donor who had once dismissed the project as not universal enough approached Olivia and extended his hand. "I was wrong," he said. "Your work is extraordinary." Olivia smiled and replied, "Thank you. But we do this for the kids, not for the applause." Standing beside her, James squeezed her hand tighter, proud of his wife's unwavering spirit. The tables had truly turned. During the gala, a reporter asked Olivia about her transformation, especially her health journey. She said, "I didn't do it to prove anything to those who mocked me. I did it because I wanted to be stronger for myself and my community." Her response was widely quoted, eclipsing the hateful comments that had once targeted her. Some of those who once laughed at their wedding photo now fell silent. Others, like a former co-worker of James's, even sent emails of apology. James smiled and told Olivia, "They don't matter anymore, Liv. We've outgrown them." The Atlanta community changed too. A local school invited Olivia to speak regularly, and the Roots Hub became a citywide model for youth programs. Even James's mother, Ellen, once skeptical of Olivia, now volunteered at the center teaching literacy classes to children. After the gala, she embraced Olivia and said, "You've made my son a better man." Olivia replied gently, "And he helped me see my worth." Back at home, Olivia and James rewatched the TEDx video that evening. Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder and said, "You know, I used to think those cruel comments would define us, but now I see they were just a footnote." James kissed her forehead. "The real story is you, us, what we've built." They put on My Funny Valentine by Ella Fitzgerald and danced slowly in the living room, knowing that while the road ahead would still hold challenges, they had already claimed an undeniable victory. 2 winters after their wedding, Atlanta wore its quiet charm, cold winds, drifting through the streets and twinkling Christmas lights glowing on Peachtree Street. James Harper and Olivia Brooks, now more than just a couple, had become symbols of resilience in East Atlanta, continuing to plant seeds of hope through the Roots Hub. Their community center had become the heart of the neighborhood, where Black youth discovered opportunity and skeptics began to change their minds. The wedding photo, once mocked online, now hung in the Atlanta Community History Museum with a caption that read, "They were mocked. Then they built a legacy." The Roots Hub had blossomed into a vibrant space filled with coding classes, art workshops, and mentorship programs. Maya, the young girl who once read a poem at their wedding, was now the leader of a poetry club inspiring her peers. Jamal, the teen, who dreamed of becoming an engineer, had just received a job offer from a tech firm in Midtown, thanks to James's coding class. Lena, Olivia's constant pillar, now ran a parent outreach program, helping local families access education and employment. With tireless energy, Olivia led everything from fundraising to speaking at local schools. James ensured the center's systems ran smoothly and continued teaching coding, where he found joy far beyond anything in a corporate office. Recognition continued to grow. One evening, Olivia received the Humanitarian of the Year award at a major event in downtown Atlanta. She stepped onto the stage, the spotlight reflecting her confident smile. In her speech, she said, "Our value isn't defined by mockery, but Ned by what we leave behind for the next generation." She spoke of James, who had stood by her side, and the East Atlanta community that helped make the Roots Hub real. As she stepped down from the podium, the room rose in a standing ovation. James, seated in the front row, couldn't hide his proud smile. The change extended beyond the community to the hearts of those who once doubted them. Ethan, James's longtime friend, who had whispered cruel words at a birthday party, visited the Roots Hub after watching Olivia's TEDx talk. He stood silently in a classroom watching children coding under James's guidance. Later, he approached Olivia and said awkwardly, "I was wrong, Olivia. What you and James have done, it's incredible." Olivia smiled and replied, "Thank you, Ethan. Our doors are always open if you'd like to participate." Weeks later, Ethan began volunteering, helping organize youth sports events at the center. James's family had also changed. His mother, Ellen, who had once worried about their relationship, was now a committed volunteer at the Roots Hub. After the award ceremony, she embraced Olivia, eyes brimming with tears. "You've made my son a better man," she said. Olivia, her voice soft, replied, "And he helped me see my worth." James's father, Robert, quiet but observant, took Olivia's hand and said, "I'm proud to call you my daughter-in-law." These are simple words, yet they are a testament to the reconciliation James and Olivia had sparked, not just in themselves, but in those around them. Atlanta felt the impact too. A local high school launched the Olivia Brooks Scholarship, supporting Black students pursuing higher education. Inspired by Stillworthy, a group of local women started a book club focused on self-worth and empowerment. The Roots Hub became a model for other community organizations across Georgia. Despite their packed schedules, Olivia and James always made time to meet with community leaders, sharing lessons and encouraging others to plant their seeds. At home, they sat together on the couch that night, reading a news article featuring their wedding photo in the museum. Olivia rested her head on James's shoulder and said, "I used to think that photo would always be a scar, but now it feels like a medal." James kissed her forehead. "It's our story, Liv, and we're still writing it." They played Summertime by Ella Fitzgerald and slow danced in the living room, the soft light wrapping around them like a reminder that even though the world once tried to break them, they stood up and built a legacy that could never be erased. In the third spring since their wedding, Atlanta awakened beneath a canopy of cherry blossoms blooming along Piedmont Park, where James Harper and Olivia Brooks had once exchanged vows beneath golden leaves. Their journey from a chance encounter in a bookstore to confronting societal prejudice had become a story of inspiration in East Atlanta and far beyond. The Roots Hub, the community center they built from seeds of value, was now a symbol of hope, where children like Maya and Jamal wrote their futures. However, the most precious thing for James and Olivia remained their simple, steadfast love and the quiet moments they shared daily. One Sunday morning, their small midtown apartment was filled with the smell of pancakes and the jazz of Ella Fitzgerald. Olivia, wearing her favorite blue sweater, stood at the stove singing along to My Funny Valentine with an off-key but heartfelt voice. Sitting at the table with his laptop, James pretended to work but admired her. "You sing better than Ella, Liv," he teased. Olivia turned, brandishing a wooden spoon like a microphone. "Careful, Mr. Harper, or I'll make you dance with me right now." They both burst into laughter. James stood and pulled her into a slow dance in the kitchen, just like the night he proposed. Moments like these were their anchor amid the busyness of running the Roots Hub. The center had recently expanded to include a small library, thanks to a grant from a local university. Olivia led confidence-building workshops, often inviting Aisha, now a freshman at Spelman College, to co-host. James had left his corporate job to become the Roots Hub's director of technology, teaching coding classes and maintaining the center's systems. With her ever-warm smile, Lena remained the soul of every community event, from outdoor movie nights to Christmas markets. The Roots Hub wasn't just a building anymore. It was a family, a place where people of all ages find purpose and belonging. The Atlanta community continued to amplify their legacy. Their once-mocked wedding photo was now part of a civil rights exhibit at the Atlanta Community History Museum. A local school named a scholarship program after Olivia and her book Stillworthy was added to the curriculum in several high schools. Former skeptics like Ethan were now dedicated volunteers. Ethan even ran youth basketball tournaments. James's mother, Ellen, had become the library's storyteller, reading to children with radiant joy. Though quiet, his father, Robert, frequently stopped by bringing homemade baked goods to share with volunteers. Olivia was invited to speak at Emory University one afternoon before hundreds of students. Her topic, the power of perseverance. On stage, her voice rang out as she shared her journey from being wounded by bias to building the Roots Hub alongside James. During the Q&A, a student nervously asked Ms. Olivia, "When people mocked you, did you ever want to fight back?" Olivia smiled, her eyes glowing. "No, because if I had screamed, they'd only remember my anger. But when I build my story, I have to listen." The room erupted in applause. Olivia looked down at the front row, where James sat holding a bouquet of cherry blossoms, just like the day he waited for her after her first book signing. After the talk, they walked hand in hand through Piedmont Park, where they had once wed. Cherry blossoms now drifted through the air like soft rain. "You know," Olivia said, "I used to think the world would never accept us. But now, I see we created our world." James stopped and looked into her eyes. "Liv, that world began with you. I'm just lucky to be part of it." Olivia smiled and leaned on his shoulder, feeling his warmth in the cool spring breeze. That evening, back in their apartment, they watched a video made by the kids at the Roots Hub, a thank you to Olivia and James for changing their lives. Maya, with her radiant smile, said, "Ms. Olivia taught me I'm worthy. Mr. James taught me how to code my own story." Tears shimmered in Olivia's eyes. She gripped James's hand. "We did it," she whispered. James nodded, kissing her hand. "And we'll keep doing it together." They played Summertime by Ella Fitzgerald and slow danced in the living room wrapped in soft lamplight. Stepping onto the balcony, they gazed down at the lights of Atlanta. People below glanced up, not with ridicule, but with admiration. Olivia smiled and said, "They once thought we couldn't. But we did, James." He wrapped his arms around her from behind and whispered, "And we'll do even more." In that moment, they knew their love, simple, steady, and unshakable, would forever be the flame lighting the road ahead.